I would like to welcome Raye, Lynn, Haywood, and Dorothy Adams. They're with CASA of Dunklin County. Raye, Lynn, Dorothy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Raye, Lynn, before we really get into what CASA does, what does CASA stand for? Because most people know it by the initials, but what does it stand for?
It's court-appointed special advocates, and we have volunteers who advocate on the behalf of children who are in care due to abuse and or neglect.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's kind of the voice of the voiceless.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And how long have you been involved in CASA?
2.5 years.
And you're the
Program director. Yes.
And what does that entail, being the program director?
Well, a little bit of everything. Mostly, a lot of it is securing funding. A lot is reporting to National CASA, Missouri CASA, trying to recruit people. We just recently, within the last month, got a new volunteer coordinator. So up until that point, I've been pretty much doing everything. So, but like I said, most of ours is recruiting, training, and supporting our volunteers.
I've never heard of this outside of Dunklin County, but are there other, Dorothy's or other CASA chapters, I guess you call it?
Yes, there's 22 in the state of Missouri, and that's, I don't think there's been any added in the past year because of the pandemic and everything, and that really crippled everything. But to give you a little history, CASA was a brainchild of a judge in Washington State back in the early 70s, because he decided he needed what he referred to as a citizen to represent children that came into his court. And therefore he started that, and it didn't move very fast, and actually it got into Missouri in the urban areas. I think Kansas City probably was one of the first ones, and but it moved in, and then in 06, January of 06 was when we started. We organized the present CASA of Dunklin County, and at that time, we are under the umbrella of the National CASA program, and then the state CASA also, and so we adhere to the bylaws that they set out and our own, and we're allowed leverage because of where you live. You have to operate according to that. And when we first organized, the most important thing, you have to have a juvenile judge that buys into the program, or it's not going to fly, because they have to want that assistance, that a volunteer can do for them. And it doesn't take long for them to realize that that is really an asset to them.
So you mentioned the judge has to be a big backer of it. Raye, Lynn, I'll let you take this question. So who's the juvenile judge in Dunklin County that's the big supporter of this?
It's Judge Pryor. And actually, he was the CASA Judge of the Year. I don't remember the exact year, do you? Several years ago.
It's been about 4 or 5 years ago.
He is very supportive of the CASA program. He calls us his extra eyes and ears, and always comments that he really considers our input, because we don't have to answer to anyone else. We can go and work with that child, develop relationships with the people involved in that child's life, and then report back exactly what we have seen and what we recommend without having to answer to any other people about it.
I always tell the volunteers when they're sworn in, and I will put in a plug here, Judge Pryor makes that a really special occasion. Yes. When they finish their training and they get sworn into the court, and he comes out in his robes, and they get to invite their family to come and witness this, and it's really because it's a special occasion.
Raye, Lynn, walk me through this. So a child comes into the court system. So tell me how you spring into action. What's your first duty as being the
we have to be appointed by the court. Like Judge Pryor has to say, I want a CASA on
So it has
this
to be
case.
official.
Has to be official, yes. And anyone can ask for a CASA. And then after he says he wants a CASA on the case, we get information about the child or children. We look at our volunteer list. First of all, who's available, who's active and ready to take a case. They can have 2 cases at a time if they choose to. And then we try to match up. Some volunteers prefer younger children, some prefer older, some don't want to travel far, some want a sibling group. You know, there's lots of variables. So we try to feel like what we feel is the best match, and then we contact that volunteer and say, we have a case, are you interested? And they can always say no, you know, or yes, whatever they think. So when we find someone who agrees to take the case, then we notify the clerk, and she sends out the official thing, the appointment. And then with that appointment, they can contact anyone involved with the child. They can get medical records, school records, meet with teachers, any counselors, anyone involved in that child's life to kind of gather information on behalf of the child.
Dorothy, this has been going on since 2006. What kind of success stories have you seen with children? I mean, this could really turn a child's life around. I'm sure that's a blessing to you too.
Yes, it can, and I think some of the success stories that I think about, we have been able to, sometimes when, you know, we in children's service workers, they really work, and, you know, the goal is to get the home in the right state where the children can return home. And, you know, we do a lot of parenting things and things like that. But if that just doesn't work, and, you know, the children are removed permanently and rights are relinquished, and we've been successful in finding adoption for some kids, and to me that's really important. Other things, you know, the older children that come, you know, maybe it's a behavioral thing, and, you know, they're mad at the world, you might say, but we have found through the years that those children will talk to that CASA worker more as a friend. And they will tell them things that they don't tell their parents, that they don't tell the children's worker. And we can go, and what I always tell the volunteers, sometimes you're not going to see the results of your being a part of this until you get a call or an invitation to attend a college graduation or something like that. And I have gone to national conventions where we have had farmer children that had CASA workers, and they tell what a difference. And, you know, they told one person that sticks in my mind, he's a neurologist now, and he had his CASA worker there with him as his guest for that convention. But, you know, he told that if it had not been for that CASA person, that he probably would have been in the penitentiary.
Right now we have about 13% of the children in Dunklin County who are in care due to abuse or neglect to have a CASA. So you can tell from 13% that we get the ones that judge and other people feel are the ones who need the most attention.
So the judge doesn't just blanket every child gets a CASA.
No, we don't have the resources for that. No, and that's one thing with the grant. That was the purpose of the grant, to try to get funding and hire more staff and try to get more volunteers and to grow the program. So,
well, let's talk about that, the funding, because Dorothy shows up once a year on behalf of CASA and says, "Barry, I'm here to get a check for you for CASA." So basically, I just say, how much do you need, right?
And we do appreciate that.
I never win the prize, though.
No, you never win the prize.
Well, as you know, we get, contributions from individuals, and we do have the Champion for Children tax credit for donations of $100 or more. We get funding from the United Way in Dunklin County, and then we have our two, the 𝐓𝐍𝐶𝐑, the grant, 𝐓𝐍𝐶𝐑 is the Victims of Crime Act, and last year, one of the highlights or one of the points of interest of the grant was they were wanting to serve unmet need. So that was how I was able to justify the grant, was that, our need, because we obviously have children in need of a CASA that we can't provide at this time. So that's our main funding source. And then we usually have those two fundraisers, our Evening with CASA and our charitable event.
And with the pandemic, it really knocked a hole in that because we didn't have that kind of money. But fortunately, the one thing that's come out of the pandemic, I suppose, we were notified that we got the grant that we had written for.
Well, that come in handy, didn't it?
And, well, it saved us. It saved us because we've been able to continue. And, we've gone on, we carried on business as usual because I said, for someone that is a people person and love to be involved with people all the time, isolation was really hard for me. But we have carried on business. We have held our monthly board meetings by Zoom, and I've got to where I love Zoom because at least I can look at people.
I can't believe you said that.
Well, Dorothy, that's a good point. Who is the grant from? How much was it?
𝐓𝐍𝐶𝐑, Victims of Crime Act, it was $139,000.
Is that something you can get every year?
We can apply every year, yes. We're waiting on the application to come out right now to see about the next cycle.
I've really enjoyed getting to know more about CASA besides just giving money every year. I didn't really know the ins and outs of it. It's a very important program. I really hope other counties will do it because, the kids need a voice.
There's a need there.
Yes, there is need.
But tell us, Lynn, how you go about becoming a volunteer for CASA. How do you do that?
The volunteers have to be 21 years of age. We do a rigorous background check, obviously, because of the nature of the task. And then we ask that they at least think they can be available for a year to a year and a half for that child, because that's one of CASA's big things we try to do is once you're assigned to that child, we try to stay with them until they achieve some sort of permanency, whether reunification with their family, guardianship, adoption, whatever it might be. So we try to be that one constant because there's so much change going on in the child's life at that time.
That's got to be a great feeling because that's the success of the program, is reuniting them with their parents.
Right. And then they complete 30 hours of training. And since the pandemic, National CASA has taken our regular curriculum and made it all where it can be done online. So it's typically 5 sessions. Then we like to do a session a week. But we will work with folks. We understand life happens and sometimes they might not get their session done that week, but they complete that week and then they'll meet with us in person or via Zoom, whatever they're comfortable with, and to go over, the objectives and make sure, answer any questions or anything like that. And then we give them the next week's. The training, as Miss Dorothy talked a little bit about that, of course, we go over our policies and procedures of the CASA program, and then we have training regarding Children's Division, Juvenile Court, human behavior associated with abuse and neglect, try to kind of help them understand what the child might be going through. Then the relevant laws, state and federal laws, and trauma, training in trauma, because obviously the child has had trauma before they're removed, and then the removal itself, no matter how kindly it's done, it's trauma. So that's the training, and then they're sworn in, as Miss Dorothy said, and then they complete 12 hours of training a year, and that can be podcasts, but pretty much anything related to children, books they can read, podcasts, webinars, anything like that.
So no wonder Judge Pryor makes it a special moment when they take their oath, because it is.
They've put in
a lot of training.
Yes.
They put the time in.
It really is.
Yes.
So CASA is really, really important in Dunklin County. Like I said, it should be important in all counties, but I really appreciate getting to know more about this program. But I'd like for you to turn around and talk directly to the viewer. And I'm gonna let Ray, Lynn, and Dorothy give a parting shot because they didn't come here to get money today, but
No.
they need more money for their program, and it's really, really important for Dunklin County. It's the voice of the voiceless child out there that gets put in a foster home, and right now during the pandemic, they need all the help they can get. So, Ray, Lynn, I'll give you the parting shot.
Okay, and as far as the money, we need volunteers. We really, really need volunteers. And we found volunteers kind of come, sometimes they travel in pairs, sometimes we get couples. We recently had a daughter and mother sworn in who had gone through training together. But I mean, you can come alone or in a group. We'd love to have anyone. We are on Facebook. It's CASADunklin.org, and also we have a website, or you can call the office at 717-1000. We would love to talk with anyone who might be interested or know of someone who might be interested in becoming a volunteer.
Lynn, you have 27 volunteers. Are they all booked right now? Do they all have a child?
We only have, right now we have, I think, 9 who have active cases.
Gotcha, okay. Dorothy, the last word.
Well, you know, if you don't feel like you can be a volunteer working with it, there's many ways that you can help our program. One, of course, is Barry, donating and being willing to help us put on fundraisers and things like that. The other thing is just word of mouth. You know, find out what you can about it and pass it on. Ironically, when the pandemic hit, CASA came out with masks that had CASA written all over it, and I happened to have to go to a medical center to have a test done, and I had that mask on, and the tech that was doing that, she looked at that and she said, CASA, what is that? And I said, oh, don't you know? And I told her, and I started, and you know what? She said, I'm going to retire in 18 months, and I think that is something I'm going to do. And I said, I will contact the CASA program where you live and tell them to get after you. So it's word of mouth helps a lot too.
Yeah, Ray, Lynn, and Dorothy. It's also, I didn't realize until today, but it's a big devotion of time for the volunteer. It's not just a devotion of training, but it's also the devotion to the child. Like you said, it could be a year, 2 years, you never know. So kudos to the volunteers, because it takes a lot of time.
Absolutely.
And they are really putting their hearts out there. Yes. They really are.
So thank y'all for being here today.
Thank you.
Very important cause here in Dunklin County. Thank Judge Pryor, because without his support, it wouldn't really be a valuable
That's very
asset
true.
to the region.
True.
So thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
We appreciate you having us.
Yes, we do. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm excited to welcome Judge Mark Pryor to the show today. Judge, welcome.
Very happy to be here. Thank you.
So Judge, I want to get into discussing about CASA. It's something that's near and dear to your heart, near and dear to my heart every year when Dorothy Adams comes and hits me up for a donation. But tell us a little bit about what you know about CASA, how you got involved, and how it's important to your court.
It was a fledgling organization here in Dunklin County when I became judge. Saw that it was a very active and beneficial part of what we needed to mentor children in addition to the juvenile office and the children's division. We've been very fortunate that we've had a lot of people, Dorothy Adams being the most recent, to lead the organization and to get funding to expand it. So we now have approximately 25 or so volunteers, men and women, who help children in Dunklin County.
Well, that's a good question. I had Ray, Lynn here and Dorothy, they're on the show, and they mentioned all females that are volunteers. Is there males that are volunteers in CASA?
The majority are female, but yes, there are some males. The mayor of Malden, Denton Kunneman, has been a volunteer for a year or maybe a year and a half now, and is very active and plays a very prominent part in children, and so we're very happy to have him and others.
So as a judge, it takes a judge to have an effective CASA. So what does the CASA organization mean to you as a judge?
It is another asset to me. What I found out very quickly when I started this job was I get to sit kind of in the big chair in the room, but without having good people around me. Volunteers with the CASA program who are unpaid, they're trained, they go through an extensive training program, and then they work as an advocate for the child. They're not, I can't fire them because I don't hire them. They don't work for the Children's Division, which has a set of rules, obviously, that they have to follow. The same is true of a juvenile office. This is an individual who can look out for the interest of the child above all others, and can, under most circumstances, keep the confidence of the child, which then makes them have a more open line of communication.
Is there any criteria that goes through your mind, your decision-making? Because you don't have to turn that child over to CASA. It's your 100% your discretion, correct?
Correct. It's ultimately the buck stops with me. I take input from CASA, who writes every time we have a 60 to 90 day review of each case. CASA submits a report, what they see, the juvenile office likewise, and the children's division likewise. And sometimes they're in agreement. Sometimes those reports are very consistent, and then sometimes they're very different. And each of them comes from a perspective and gives me the opportunity to try to make the best decision for the child.
Why don't all other counties in Missouri or all other states have CASA? Is there some type of situation where it's the funding, or is it the personnel, can't get enough volunteers? Why don't we have this program everywhere? Because it's really good.
It really falls down to the leadership of the court. I think that any judge can push that if they choose. It is obviously a funding issue, and having somebody like Dorothy and like Mary Lynn right before her, they were very strong advocates of the program and gave a lot of their time early on. Now the money has been more flowing because we've had a successful program. We've had a Volunteer of the Year award, a Judge of the Year award in the 10 years we've been there from the program. And so, yes, everyone should do it. Everyone can do it. It just takes the right people to get it started in each county.
So Raye, Lynn, and Dorothy give you a lot of credit for the success of this program. When you swear a new volunteer in, you make it really special for the volunteer. I don't know if you wear your robe all the time, but you wear your robe, and you have an official swearing in ceremony. Tell us a little bit about that, because it is special. It
is special, and there is a serious oath that they take about following not only the laws of the state of Missouri and the Constitution of Missouri and the United States, but that they will put the needs of the child above all others.
Judge, can you tell us a incident or placement of a child that you worked with CASA to do what's best for the child? Do you have a good success story?
One comes to mind, and we always remember this one because there were 5 children removed from one family.
Which 5 would be hard to place?
Hard for the place. Hard to find a home, somebody that's willing to accept 5 siblings. And some of them were half siblings, but they all had the same mother and the same background, and we very much wanted to keep them together. It was a challenge to find a foster home and then a prospective adoptive home that would do that. The CASA volunteer, which happened to be a husband and wife team, worked for years, the better part of 2 years, at trial homes that didn't fail, that didn't work out, homes where they just said they can't keep all 5 of them. Ultimately, with their persistence, a home was found and all 5 children were adopted and doing well. And I consider that to not have been able to have occurred nearly impossible without the help of CASA.
Judge, thank you for bringing all this important information. It's really important to our county. It's really important to our state. And you've enlightened me on many, many issues. And I really appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege, and thank you for getting the information out to the community.
Thank you.